Hi, this is Teddy, and you're listening to Shaunna Thomas from UltraViolet on Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Demcast Podcast Network. Bye.
Hey everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Demcast family of podcasts. And the other broad with me today is Shaunna Thomas, who is the co-founder and executive director at UltraViolet. Hi, Shaunna.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining me in what I believe is going to be just a series of conversations with kick-ass women in January. So we're going to start 2020 off right here. So could you start by just talking a little bit about what UltraViolet is and how you got into this work?
Absolutely. So UltraViolet is an organization that is membership driven. We have 1.2 million members in every single state and congressional district, and we are here to drive feminist culture and political change. As our name sort of implies, although I find it's often helpful to point it out, a lot of what we do is exposing the things we can't see, from sexism to racism, the structures that sort of, are in place to oppress a lot of people in this country that get in the way of women, especially women of color, Black women, Indigenous women, LGBTQ people, from being able to live, to be able to thrive, to live a joyful, liberated life. And we are here to both expose, the problems and give people ways to take action to drive us toward a solution, to drive us toward a more positive, liberated kind of vision for the future. We do that in a few ways. We do a lot of rapid response work that ends up being very sort of corporate accountability focused on people who are leading major corporations, who are putting policies in place, who are making political donations that undermine women and the communities we're here to serve. Sometimes it's advocating for policy change, whether it's the Violence Against Women Act or the Whole Women's Health Act, to make sure that women still have access to the reproductive health services they need. And sometimes it's organizing campaigns designed to get the best candidates for women elected, or to ensure that the very worst candidates, the people who pose the greatest threats to women in our communities, do not get reelected.
And what is your background? How did you end up doing this sort of work?
Yeah, so I would not have predicted that I would be doing feminist, anti-sexist, anti-racist organizing when I was growing up. I mean, I grew up a privileged white woman, very Republican, very conservative, in this conservative pocket of Los Angeles. And I had kind of a political sort of awakening that I was, that there was sort of, that this was not the path I was meant to be on, and I didn't think the path that the country should be on. When the Patriot Act was signed, I was in college, and we started the March to War in Iraq, eerily relevant to the moment that we're in right now.
Shockingly relevant.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about it a lot lately, how one big difference being that we didn't have Twitter then, and it was very lonely to think that the going to war in Iraq was a bad idea. So that's at least one nice change. So I said, conservatives, Republicans working against us, I'm gonna join this campaign to get John Kerry elected, because I thought he represented sort of the best chance to ensure we get out of war. That introduced me kind of to the Democratic Party, which then introduced me to the larger progressive movement. And I started doing, organizing across a broad range of progressive issues. The immediate sort of stepping stone before starting UltraViolet was running an organization that was designed to sort of link the big online groups like Move On and Democracy for America and Progressive Change Campaign Committee and Credo to progressive members of Congress, and really building the power of the Progressive Caucus during the Obama administration, when we had an opportunity to make big legislation like healthcare, tax policy, financial sector reform as progressive as possible. And it was sort of in the process of that work that I and my co-founder, Nita Chaudhry, who was at Move On at the time, had to learn this lesson over and over and over again, that even when Democrats control the White House, and for a while there controlled Congress too, women were still being thrown under the bus in order to pass, in order to pass big pieces of legislation, whether it was the Stupak Amendment to the Affordable Care Act, which was meant to sort of double underline that the government would never make sure that poor women of color could get, could access that critical health service, or attaching an abortion rider to tax cuts. It was sort of stunning. And we looked around and said, there are a lot of issues, there are a lot of things contributing to this power dynamic, this problem, considering women represent more than 50% of the population. We donate more money, we volunteer more time, we vote more often, and it's not translating to the power we need to ensure that the policies are in place to not just protect our rights, but support our ability to live the lives that we deserve to lead. And one of those things we thought was missing that we could address was a rapid response, digital first organizing shop that could take advantage of those unpredictable moments or predictable moments that have big media exposure and, offer people in that moment a way to take action in that moment that they've been inspired or outraged, and to take action in a way that leads to change, that stops that bad piece of legislation from moving forward, that puts those decision makers on notice that they're being seen and that they will be held accountable if they move forward, to force corporations to do things they otherwise would not have done that are in the best interest of women and LGBTQ people of color who work for them and are their consumers. Yeah, so that was the idea. That's why we started UltraViolet, and that's essentially my background. It's mostly been in progressive organizing, a lot of it in digital organizing, and sort of came together to enter the feminist space as sort of a newbie, which was now almost 8 years ago.
So I love this idea of rapid response and actual action that you can take. I think, I get really depressed when there's pieces that are like, here's all the things that are terrible, but without an outlet to say, and this is how you can then make it better. But everything seems so terrible right now at the start of 2020. How do you as an organization, and you as a person for that matter, decide sort of how to focus, which pieces of terrible legislation, which things are really the things that we need to be focusing on and taking action on right now?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the opportunities, as we like to say, for affecting change, for taking on the threats that exist, there's a lot. And no one organization, right, it can take them on. No movement, right, can take them all on at the same time. And so we do have some, we do have, I guess what you could call parameters in place, thinking about like, what are the issue areas and the sort of content areas where we think we are best positioned to affect the most meaningful strategic change in 2020. For us, that's in 3 issue areas. One is sexual assault and harassment, specifically ending sexual assault and harassment at work. Another is around reproductive health care, and specifically not just preserving Roe v. Wade, but running campaigns designed to both shift our culture and ultimately expand access that people have to that to that full range of reproductive health services they need, and sexism in the media. And specifically in 2020, what that looks like is holding media accountable for the ways in which they, engage in sexist tropes and, undermine women who are running for office. What that last piece has looked like so far is we've done a lot of work around the debates. We worked with a number of groups to lead a sort of coalition to ensure that every single debate would be moderated by at least one woman and person of color. And that work, will be, unfortunately, we will be very busy in 2020 on that front. On the reproductive health and rights side, what that looks like is both being ready to respond. So there's going to be a Supreme Court, a case where Roe is what the community has been flagging as a possibility for a long time is coming true, right? That the existence of Roe is under threat. And we believe there's an opportunity this year to hold corporations accountable for their role in propping up and funding the anti-abortion movement that, got us to this place where they have this much power in the courts at all levels, and state legislatures and the federal legislature. And so we're running a campaign that is focused on essentially defunding the anti-abortion movement, exposing the biggest corporations that are invested, mobilizing consumers, mobilizing shareholders, and starting to sort of chip away at the funding that they have that enables them to build this kind of power. And then when it comes to ending sexual assault and harassment at work, unfortunately, this is also an area where there are many opportunities for rapid response. It seems like every day somebody new is being exposed, but we also know that structural change is necessary if we don't want to just play whack-a-mole with bad actors all day, which we do not, although it's important sometimes or often, frankly. And so what that looks like is both advocating for broad kind of legislative solutions, comprehensive legislative solutions like the Be Heard Act, which was newly introduced last year with our help, and focused on the major corporations like Comcast and Amazon, working with them on the inside and pushing on the outside to put new systems in place to protect employees and to end the culture of sexual assault and harassment that unfortunately continues to persist.
So as we're recording right now, Harvey Weinstein is actually having a criminal trial for repeated terrible actions. How do we use this moment and the way that things like Me Too are really having a light shined on them, and then there's backlash, and there's so much that goes on with that. How do we use that moment to really make sure people are thinking about systemic problems, are thinking about how we should address this more largely? How do we use this moment to inform more people about what's been happening? What do you see as sort of the how we can take a really terrible thing and sort of use it to make the best possible outcome from it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, activists, advocates, survivors, I think, have done an amazing job of leveraging this incredibly sad and scary story that makes up the Harvey Weinstein case and situation to expose the broader structural problems that exist. And we know that there's a lot more to do. I think this particular moment, right, in this particular case, I mean, is challenged in terms of the media landscape by being on the brink of, by Iran, by impeachment, right, by just and all the issues we care about are going to be eclipsed at a lot of different points by what's at stake in the 2020 election. But I do think there is, with this case ongoing, there is a continued opportunity to both educate about what happened, what went wrong, right, from a survivor's perspective, how this happened and how it could be prevented. And I think this is true anyway about what we're seeing from our own members is that, people are horrified by Harvey Weinstein. They're horrified by Les Moonves, although maybe sort of less aware because he had even less of a profile, right, for the broader public than Harvey Weinstein did. And they are really eager for a conversation about what is needed structurally, both in terms of policy and culture change, and education, right? Sex education, for example, starting much younger and much more comprehensively than we have now. I mean, there are so many sort of different content areas I think that people are really eager to be digging into. And so while I think Harvey Weinstein, the Harvey Weinstein case is an important moment for education, I think, to the extent that we can be using it as an opportunity to talk about the structural solutions that we need at all levels of our society and our politics and our culture, and at school, at work, at home, in church, right, or places of worship. Then I think we will, I think we will be meeting kind of the demand of survivors and their allies more adequately than I think we've been able to do over the last year, with so much. In 2 years, really, with so much of the emphasis being on the abusers themselves, right? And what led them, what they did, how they did it, sort of the salacious sort of details around that, as opposed to what survivors experience, what they need, and what they need to see change in order to prevent this kind of, this kind of abuse from happening in the future. I also think it's a case that Harvey Weinstein is viewed as kind of an anomaly. And that there are very few people who are able to act with the kind of impunity that he did, that are able, that are predators to the extent that he is a predator. And while that certainly is true if you're talking about just like the entire population of the United States, the people and the systems in place to enable that kind of behavior, to permit that kind of behavior, is also kind of the story I think people are eager for hearing more about and talking about. So we'll play a role in that. And there's a number of organizations, grassroots organizing shops all the way up to, Time's Up, the behemoth that has sort of launched since the Harvey Weinstein stories really started breaking and opened up such big new possibilities for change in the entertainment industry and now many other industries as well.
So you're a mom of young kids like I am, although I think yours might be slightly younger. But, how do we raise the next generation to be really conscious of all of this, but at an age appropriate way? Do you have specific things that you make sure to do with your kids?
Yeah, so I do have, my kids are Liam is my youngest, he's 2. Stella is the older one, she's 3.5. And this is actually a question I really struggle with, and I'd be super interested to hear your thoughts. I am far from an expert because on the one hand, I'm not quite at that place where I'm like really, where this is sort of right in front of my face. And, my instincts right around this these are instincts that have not been tested, to be clear. My instincts around this are that addressing this stuff is not that, with a young child, is not that different from how we, approach organizing people at any age, which is to be honest, right, about the challenges, about the problems, and couple that honesty with a vision for the future, right, and a path for how we can get there. One that is empowering, one that really leans into the fact that we are agents. We have the power to change things, and maybe not tomorrow, maybe not overnight, and certainly not alone, right? But that being agents of change, engaging in having a strong theory of change, and knowing what your role is in that is just, I think, crucial for our survival in these times.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my boys are 8 and 5, and so it's something I've had to sort of explicitly talk to them about a little more. But even so, I'll talk to them a lot about things like sexism and, consent and things like that. But it's hard to talk about things like, how do you be a good ally if you see something happening, without sort of scaring them about what sorts of things could be happening and what does that look like? And so, if anyone listening has any experts on this that I should bring on the podcast, let me know. But I think we talk about it and we think about it a lot, but it's always hard to sort of take that next step and make sure that we're really giving them every tool that we need to be giving them, so that the next generation can be sort of a lot more thoughtful and smart about all of this.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, look, I think your point about like what we do as individuals is really important. I mean, we talk a lot about structural change because it shouldn't be it is too much to put right on any one individual young boy or young girl to figure out how to solve this larger problem. And there are things that one can do, right, to be a part of positive change. And there are so many great resources that exist, but they haven't really been distributed or popularized sort of at scale. And so I do think one of the things that we do this at UltraViolet, could be doing more, but I think, needs to happen more broadly is distributing these kinds of tools and resources for people who very explicitly don't want to be a part of the problem, but aren't sure what that looks like.
Yeah, that's true in all sorts of facets of life.
Totally.
So if our listeners would like to join UltraViolet and get involved, how do they do that?
We would be so excited to welcome you to the UltraViolet community. We can be found online at weareultraviolet.org. We're also on Facebook at UltraViolet, and We Are UltraViolet on Instagram and YouTube. All of those places, there are links to join. if you go to We Are Ultraviolet, you'll see Become a Member here, and you sign up and you will be on our list, and we will, from that point forward, provide you with a lot of opportunities to take action on the kinds of campaigns we talked about today, and to get involved in, in building a better a future beyond this sort of white supremacist patriarchy that we find ourselves in now. And we are very much a people-powered, people-centered community, and we look forward to working with all of you to bring that future about.
And we have a Democratic debate coming up very soon again here. Do you have any particular advice or calls to action for people to think about when they are watching the lead up to the debate itself and then the reactions to the debate?
Yeah, look, I mean, we're getting really close to primary. So there's to Iowa. And so I do think that more people are going to be watching, more people are going to be paying attention. The stakes are getting higher. The differences between the candidates are becoming a little bit more clear. And what we need to see, I think, is a much more significant commitment on the part of candidates for aligning themselves, for being clear about what their role is and their commitment to standing up on issues that are of particular importance to women. Abortion access and rights being under so much threat. It is outrageous how little discussion we've had about that on the debate stage. And similarly, I mean, we've been having a conversation as a country for over 2 years now about the epidemic of sexual assault and harassment. And we haven't heard almost anything from most candidates about what their role is going to be in their view and, what it takes to change that. We will be giving people ways to take action to tell candidates directly what they want to hear from them on this. And if you join the Ultraviolet community, you'll be able to do that.
All right. Excellent. Well, Shaunna, thank you so much for joining me today. And when we post this, we'll put links up on our website to the Ultraviolet website and social media accounts so people can find that. And I hope everyone will join and will really be thinking about these issues a lot in 2020, in addition to all the terrible things that are happening and all the other issues we need to be focused on.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Dimcast Podcast Network. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or on Twitter or Facebook at twobroadstalk. You can find all of our episodes at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com or anywhere podcasts are found.